All right, Michael, you can do this. Mick's going to say the word would a lot in this episode. You don't have to do the cheap jokes. You don't have to insert that. You could be above that. You can do better than that. You believe in yourself. You're going to say would. He's going to say would. No cheap jokes. We can do this. Today I sit down with Mick Danielson from NorseWest Woodshop. This is Headphones Recommended. Ready?
Yep.
Hey, it's Michael with Headphones Recommended. Thank you for tuning in. I'm sitting down today with Mick Danielson from NorseWest Woodshop. If you follow any of his social media accounts, you already know how amazing his work is. Mick, thanks for sitting down with me, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And so, let's start out. Who are you?
Well, I'm Mick Danielson. I was born and raised here in Astoria. Kind of grew up here. Just doing what.
Born and raised,
Yeah.
and this, and for those who are listening outside the area, this is Astoria, Oregon, County. I thought that was
Astoria, Oregon.
Yeah, home.
Home, yeah.
Awesome.
Right.
And so for those of you who know you, we now know you, right? For the amazing wood creations that you make, for all of this projects that you put in for local businesses, which we'll take some time. We'll get into that. But tell me, where were you before NorseWest?
Well, before NorseWest, I was in retail management in Portland. That was the last kind of job I had before I came into this, which was about 10 years ago.
Okay.
And when I first started out, I was basically doing handyman work, landscaping, anything I could do to get into like what it's become now, basically.
Okay. Yeah. And so just to make it real practical for individuals, like, are we talking like Craigslist ads or like putting out
Word of
ads?
mouth.
Word of mouth.
Word of mouth.
Right?
Yeah, I came back. I had been gone for a while. Like I'd been working like in of all places like Clackamas Town Center, which is hard to believe now.
Yeah.
10 years later, and it was just time for a change. And when I left the time for a change as far as like leaving Portland and coming back to the coast, coming back to my roots.
Awesome. And so like fixing banisters, I mean, just like, putting up cabinets.
Some of that.
Stuff.
Any kind of like, it was just a bunch of random things.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of my clientele at that time were elderly that were on a fixed income.
Mm-hmm.
So they only could, you knew exactly how much to charge, what they could afford and all that. So that's kind of how I started with that.
Okay. When did your own, like, creating your own projects come into play?
It actually started when I had a couple different clients ask me if I could build something, and it would, just be something really random, like,
Like, do you remember what the first request was?
I think it was a countertop.
Yeah.
Was my first one.
Mm-hmm.
Or a bench. It was either a bench or a countertop. It was one of the two.
And these were residential. These weren't commercial products.
One of it was actually commercial.
Yeah.
And I remember I had been building several things to start a portfolio, basically, like benches, little coffee tables, like just for friends, like trying to kind of like develop a style and a portfolio and all that. 'Cause I'd been building since I was a kid. I really, I don't know. I never really thought of it as something I could keep doing. So
it was just a passion.
More of a hobby, passion.
Yeah. And so it wasn't like you went to Clackamas Town Center, worked retail over there, and were just magically imbued with the power to create wood art.
No, well,
that's something you've been doing.
I had been in retail because, like, originally when I came back here, I had started a T-shirt company, like a clothing company, and so when I went into retail, it was kind of to get an education in retail, to figure out the ins and outs of it without
Okay, like means to an end.
Means to an end.
Yeah. Okay.
And just kind of work my way up the ladder there.
Okay.
And,
So you got you're making some tables, you're making some benches, you're making some things for some friends, right? At what point did you start to realize that this could be its own thing?
Well, I think when I started getting more requests to build things, I think that was the biggest indicator that it could become like an actual, career, an actual like business. And I slowly started weaning off the landscaping projects and, telling people I couldn't mow their lawn anymore, because that's what I did to supplement a lot.
Okay, so you came back to the Astoria, North Coast area in Oregon. You were doing some landscaping to be able to help, pay those bills, make ends meet, do all that.
That's what I had started that business first. I called it the Swede.
The Swede.
The Swede, and it was basically, I'm Swedish, like descendants and Norwegian and all that, but so I started that as like, it's all about branding. It's like what you want to do, and it's like I wanted people to know like who I was and what. And, so they said, "What's your business?" I did that, and so I started that. And as I really got more into woodworking, which is a passion of mine and a love of mine, I started to slowly not do as many landscaping jobs.
Okay, and so I'm keeping track. The landscaping. T-shirts. Woodworking. Any other ventures that were in there in that period? Because one of the things that I've, the more entrepreneurs and the more business owners and the more doers, those who've moved from dreams to reality, the more I talk to, the more stories I get about how the one that they really land on and they're really just killing it at, and it's becoming their career. The more I'm realizing that is not their first attempt.
Nope.
Right? So, like, in the number
or
of...
their second. Or their third.
And so, some of the folks I'm talking to, I mean, we're talking about, like, 6th, 7th, iterations of this dream, or just practicing those skills. NorseWest Woodshop, like, on the timeline, how many other attempts did you have, or how many other ventures did you have before this one was really getting nailed down?
Right. So when I first came back, I started a business called Oregon Tough, and with family, and we did that, and ended up, doing really well for our first year, and we were very successful.
What kind of business was it?
It was a T-shirt business, like clothing company, kind of a tribute to the workers of Oregon, kind of like what my grandpa and uncles and everybody else did, like fishing, logging, farming, that kind of thing. And it eventually failed. It didn't have the legs to keep going. And then the next year I started another one called Explore Network, and it was kind of Northwest, not Northwest yet, Northwest centric designs, and kind of like
also clothing.
And like we did stickers, we did that kind of thing. And it eventually failed too. So I kept trying and trying to find what that was that would, take you to that next spot, and take all these experiences that you had of failure and take them and turn them into something else. So you had almost like a resume, a portfolio of like what not to do and what to do.
Yeah.
And as hard as it was to fail at those things,
it brought you here, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, you take lessons from each of those. You learn something along the way. And it's over and over in the conversation I've had. It seems to be one of the going themes, right? There's I've said it before. Like, there's a lot of folks that think that I'm going to go out. I've got this passion, and I'm going to work really hard, and my first attempt is going to be a wild success, and I'm going to make $1 million, and I'm going to retire on a beach in Mexico, and I'm going to end this with an undefeated record, and that's just not reality.
No, it's
right?
not, and it's not a very good goal either. Especially when you're starting a business, you have to be realistic.
Yeah. Well, let's. That's a good transition. Let's move on over now, and let's talk. Okay, so you've got you've got landscaping that's helping to be able to pay the bills. You've got clothing lines that you're working on. You've got the wood shop and the wood projects that you're working on. At what point did it? At what point did you start to realize that I can start dropping off these other things, and I can start moving on over and just focus on NorseWest Woodshop?
Well, a lot of it was supply and demand. Like when you got that many requests to do woodworking projects, but there was also a part of me that was like, that's a leap of faith too, because if you're going all in on that, and you don't know if work will be there.
Yeah.
You don't know. You have no clue. As we're landscaping, mowing lawns, that's always going to be there.
Grass is going to grow.
Guess what? That lawn's going to be, ready to mow next week. And at some point, you had to be like, look, you got to go all in or not. Push your chips in the middle, go for it. And I would say that was about 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago now.
Note to self: record that for a clip for a promo later. So that was a good one. Push all the chips in the middle.
Yeah.
And so you're saying like you can't ever be 100% confident, but even then, the orders are coming in. You're now more in demand. You're ready to start going. Still a little bit of like venturing into the darkness, right?
Yeah, I think so. Especially coming off of other past failures of starting, small businesses. And I would say that there was definitely some hesitation, but at the same time, there was so much excitement to try and do this.
Yeah.
To finally kind of like take an idea and a dream and make it a reality.
Yeah, trust in yourself.
Yeah.
And trust in your passion.
Right.
More than you're hearing, any of the fear or any of the concern, right? And just
Right.
making it happen.
Right.
Awesome. So you're starting to get orders. What are the requests that you get?
Oh, it's so many different things. Like there's I can't even list how many things. It's so many tables, bar tops, cabinets, little boxes. Like making a poetry box right here.
Okay.
Like just the most random things that you could imagine, and some stuff that I had never built, but I love a challenge. To where it's like, I've never built that, but let me try.
Yeah.
And if I can't, let me find somebody who can do it.
So we're not ordering off a menu. It's not like,
No.
Chicken, steak, or fish.
It's all custom orders. It's all like, there's times where they're very specific on what they want and how they want it done. And there's other times where, and most of the time, where they allow me to be creative and do it on my own and come up with something. And I don't show them anything until the final result. And they're, most of the time they're pretty happy.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of experiences where they weren't happy, but yeah.
Awesome. And you ever had a project that you refused?
Not many. I try and take, and that might be a problem too at times where you take on too much. But I would say there was a couple where they were more house remodel type things, more of a contractor-ish, where you need a big crew. Those kind of things, but nothing like in my realm of furniture making. There's not something I feel like I've turned down that would fall under that category.
What's a piece that just sticks out in your memory?
There's a few. Early on, a light fixture at Doe and Arrow. When you walk in there, that's one of my favorites that I've done. I'd say
describe it for.
It's just
we'll
it's like 22
graphic,
lights hanging off this like old like chandelier that I made out of like just random pieces of wood. Just very artistically done. That was one of the first like pieces that in my mind I can think that I did that was kind of like full on like creative freedom and kind of like go for it. I would say that one sticks out in my mind a lot. Recently, a wine cabinet that I built, just where I had never built one before, and I was like gonna go for it. So it's like a huge thing. And, so those two, there's so many that do. I could make a huge list of them that really stick out. Anytime I get to build whiskey cabinets, which is fun. There's a lot. Tables at Street 14 this summer, the picnic tables, that was a cool thing.
Let's talk about that. Because you've done a lot of commercial work as well. And so do you have a list? Do you have a growing list of like how many businesses you've worked with or got a number for me?
I don't have the exact number, but it's quite a few. And that was actually a goal of mine when I first started out. It was not about money. It wasn't about anything like that. It was like I really just wanted to get as many pieces into as many places as possible. Growing up here and being like my hometown, it was like I really wanted to like do that. I don't know, there was just something about that. And to me, success isn't always measured by numbers. It's like it's what you love and to do, and to be able to to do something like that for people, like if they need something made, and repeat customers, like that's awesome. So that's definitely a goal, was to get as many pieces into as many places as possible.
You're using past tense. Is it still a goal?
It is.
It is still a goal, yeah. And so any business that you want to create something for that you haven't had a chance to yet, let's, if you
there's
want,
one in mind.
Do we want to call them out right now, and maybe they're listening and maybe they want to get a hold of you?
Oh man.
Humility.
There's
folks.
one. There's
Humility.
one that I have always. There's a few that I've always wanted to do something for, but there's one that comes to mind immediately. I'm not sure if I want to say who they are, but
maybe I'll get it out of him later.
Okay.
Maybe. So we'll see. All right, and so the so now on our timeline, right? You've let go of the you've let go of the landscaping business.
Right.
Have you, at this point, you're starting to be able to do more projects. The clothing lines are done; those are back, right? So what's the experience then? Like, talk me through the feeling of, you've taken away, you've essentially removed the net. You're on the high wire, right? And so, did it feel like that, or
it never did?
No,
it never did. I don't.
Yeah.
And I don't. In everything you just said, it should have. It should have felt like. Wow, you're really going for it, and like, aren't you a little scared or nervous? It never did, because it just felt like there was such a demand for work and a demand to do creative and fun projects that I just keep going, So that was kind of cool.
Awesome. And and I know, and again, I'm going to ask folks to redirect to redirect their attention back on over like your Instagram account at NorseWest Woodshop. You're an artist as well. Like I'm thinking of the most recent post that I saw, which was it's a baked good box, or like a bakery, like a bakery, or baked goods display box.
Right.
That was easy to say, and that's at the Side Road Cafe.
Side Road Cafe
here in Warrenton. Yep. And for a lot of folks, like if I think of myself as a creative person, and I think of myself as an artistic person. But I take when I create, I take like a blank palette, and then I add my art to it, right? You, on the other hand, seem to you use your medium as individual elements of your art with the different styles of wood that you use, because people could come along and they could just build like a really nice, handsome, display box for baked goods, and it would be the exact same fucking thing that they could get out of Walmart or at some like a Fred Meyer or whatever, right? You end up with the styles of wood that you decide to use and the pieces that are on there actually create a piece of art, right? And so can you describe that? By this point, when the podcast comes out, it'll be up for a couple of weeks, but can you just describe what was your process in making that piece, and and just walk me through it.
Well, that particular one, I knew kind of what I wanted to do, from the get-go, but it's as you're building it, you're gonna. I think the best projects to do are when you start it with a plan and it turns into something completely different that you didn't even think of, but you'll only think of it as you're doing the process.
Yeah.
And so with that particular piece, I'm actually building it for woodworkers that own Side Road. They're very accomplished woodworkers, so it's you have got to bring your A game. You've got to do something that's on their level. And so that was a big part of that. And then recently I did a bar top for Good to Go in town. And what I try and do is I try and make a piece that fits the owner, it fits the location, and as you go in there, you'll see the wood tones that they're put together. It's not by accident. They're put together a certain way to mimic whatever that area is already presenting.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. Creating in order to be able to complement the space for others. That's impressive.
And try and give them something they've never seen.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing. Like you were saying, you can go anywhere. You can go to my Swedish heritage place, up in Portland, IKEA, and get something like that. Damn IKEA. But
damn IKEA
yeah.
and your connection to its heritage.
Yes, but it's so cool and refreshing to be able to make something like that. That you can't go get that in a store. You
No.
can't, and it's made custom for the size, the space, everything.
Yeah.
And that's what I do. That's why I don't want to have a pile of furniture I built in a room and try and sell it. I'd rather find the individual, build them something that is for them and specific for that size.
Yeah.
You know, but so.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So we're about to take a break.
Okay.
One last chance to be able to call out that business that you really want to work with.
Oh man. No.
Oh, we'll hold up. What a gentleman. All right. We're going to take a quick break. Hang tight. We'll be right back with Mick Danielson from NorseWest Woodshop. And we are back with Mick Danielson from NorseWest Woodshop. Mick, something I want to hear more about, and I'd like you to describe, if you can. What's the process that goes through in creating a piece? Like, how does someone get a hold of you?
Mm-hmm.
What's the design process like? What's the actual fabrication process like? Delivery? Walk me through an entire order.
Well, as far as getting a hold of me, a lot of clients get a hold of me through Instagram, Facebook, or just through like word of mouth, like business cards that I've had given to other people.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it's word of mouth, to be honest with you. That's how it all kind of started, and it's still probably the biggest one.
Mm-hmm. And that word of mouth is just from like, you've done a project,
Yeah.
you've done something for somebody else. They're like,
Just referrals,
shit, this is cool,
Yeah.
you know, and then just passing somebody else along.
passing somebody else along.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you get a referral.
Right.
Then what?
Depending upon what the project is, I mean, I give a timeline, cost, what it would be, and then, but before I kind of do that, I figure out like what kind of wood they want to use,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because that'll determine what cost is going to be, how easy it is to get that kind of wood, or you know, things like that. It's really just, it depends on what it is, you know, what the wood is. That'll determine cost. What I'm building will determine how long it takes, and then just what else I have on my calendar.
Okay. Because and again, for anybody who's gone online, anybody who hasn't gone on social media and seen your project, I would highly recommend get out there, go take a peek at it, because you're not just building everything out of pine. Like when you talk about like you're gonna get or fir or whatever, right?
Right.
When you're talking about like actually like selecting the woods, we're talking about some rather exotic woods as well, right?
Yeah, I like to work with all kinds of different woods, whether it be something you can get local here, like alder at like the Olney Mill,
Mm-hmm.
or going to Portland at Crosscuts, or to Gobi or Sustainable Northwest Hardwoods, where you can get exotic hardwoods, local hardwoods. That's really my passion, is working with the more higher quality woods.
Mm-hmm. Give me some examples of some types of wood that I've never heard of.
Well, I recently did a amplifier made out of bloodwood, which is kind of common, but also canary wood that I've never worked with until very recently.
And where does canary wood come from?
South America and Africa, kind of like
Wow.
down there.
Yeah.
Padauk is another one. It's the very orange wood. If you
Yeah.
look at the wine cabinet I did, it's the orange wood that's in there.
Yeah.
It's also on the front of the display case at Side Road. It's the two pieces on the end. So Padauk, Purple Heart, any of these kind of like woods that maybe you've heard of but you've never seen it.
Yeah.
And I get that a lot, especially when I'm doing cutting boards, like at bazaars. I'll have, I want to put stuff in that you've never seen. Like, wow, like what is that? And a lot of times they'll see the Purple Heart or some of these other woods and say, did you paint that or stain that?
Yeah,
I'm like, no, that's the actual color of the wood.
Yeah.
And I love, working with that stuff. It brings something unique to a lot of the pieces that I do.
Yeah, and during the break, for example, we were talking about a project that you're working on right now. Where you just kind of highlighted something that I see in your work. you really like to let the nature, like the actual wood, the color of the wood and the nature of the wood really shine through. You don't,
I don't
you
like
know.
to stain things unless I have to, unless it's by request. A lot of bookcases, like people want like stained dark.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times that's made out of hardwood plywood anyway, just for structural, all that, and affordability. But I really like the natural wood to shine through, where you're just putting either a clear coat on it or a wood conditioner or something that just highlights that particular wood.
Yeah.
And that's probably a part of what I do too that is maybe different, is I like to put different woods together. I don't want to make like just a walnut coffee table. I want to add a stringer in there of some other species that just is so different and highlights it in a way that like you've never seen before and you can't just go get, because I don't want to make boring stuff.
No.
To me it's like everybody's different in their style. I know my style at times is like, well, that's crazy, like where'd you come up with that, or like that it's not going to work for everybody, and I'm okay with that. That's something that I feel is part of what I do, is like mixing the different woods together.
Yeah.
Bringing worlds together.
There you go. There you go. We have a job for you on the federal government level. if your talent is bringing worlds together. So let's continue on this though. So you get an order.
Yeah.
Let's say that somebody's looking for a bed set.
Right.
What do you do next? I mean, like you talk about them, like for wood, for materials,
you get all that,
prices.
And then you go and measure everything that you're going to need. Find out what. Because this is all custom. That's what you're doing, is you're trying to provide them something that like they want, like down to the detailed, like last minute little thing where it's like, you can get a dresser that's like 6.5 feet long and not 6 feet long, and it fits in this particular space.
Yeah.
So find out like how, like where they want it, how they want it built, and just write it all down, and then just go and start building it.
Do you start with sketches? Do you draw anything,
Sometimes
ideas
people
out?
will ask for something drawn up. I gotta admit, I'm not very good at that. Like I'd rather, I have it in my head how I do it, and maybe I'll just draw out like a simple thing. And I think some people like have seen that and been like, this isn't what I.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, it is. Just trust me.
Yeah.
Go with it. But a lot of times it's like, that's probably maybe something that I could get better at. But a lot of times people don't ask for them anyway.
Yeah.
So.
And so you'll have a general idea as to what you want, and then you just measure, cut, assemble, make it happen. Just that's a visionary talent. Do you get that? Like, do you get like not everybody can do that? You get it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm thankful for that.
Yeah.
I guess in some ways, like, that I wouldn't have a job otherwise. But I like making things. I like to create things.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. So as you're, how often does it happen that as you're, you've got your plan in your head, you've got your measurements, you've got your materials, you're good, you start assembling. How often you just go, this isn't looking right, and then just have to change it up or change gear just a little bit?
I can think of several projects that I had started with a plan, drawn out, detailed, drawn out, and it turned into something that I was very embarrassed about. Like, it's just not what I wanted to do at all. And so halfway through, like, a light bulb will go off, and you'll be. And a lot of times you got to walk away from it. You got to step away, like, especially if you're working all day on it. You're like, just take a step back, take a breath, go for a walk, go into nature, whatever you got to do, and then come back to it. And it's like everything that was wrong with it, you've already come up with like a new solution for it to fix.
Okay. And you just you made me think of something. How many projects do you work on at a time?
That's a good question. I would say that, like right now, looking around the shop, I've probably got about 6 different projects going on right now.
For everyone who's waiting for Mick to finish your project, I apologize for stealing him to be able to use this time.
Some are more long-term than others, but
I
would say that that's kind of around that. It varies. There'll be times where I've got like 3 or 4 going on, like full-on going on at the same time. I've probably got 6 going now, but some of them are smaller, and they are later on in the year. But it's more like getting started, like to get them done. There's no timeline to get that one done, but
But it does give you that outlet that if you're getting really stuck or frustrated with one, you know what, maybe, I mean, do you ever find yourself like stopping this project, moving over here, working on this one, coming back feeling inspired?
Absolutely, and there's definitely times where I'll get something day of and I'll do it, and a lot of times they'll be like, well, it's out of order, but what it is, it's actually a warm-up project. I call them warm-up projects, where it's just, you're using saws, you're doing all these things, like maybe it's just building a box or a case, but it's something that just kind of like gets you warmed up before you start on this big epic, you know, cabinet or something where you just, it's like you're warming up before a game. You know, you gotta do that. So there's definitely times where I'll step away and be like, let me knock this thing out before I get going on this 2-week, 3-week adventure of building this cabinet or like dresser or something along those lines.
And that's a good point. Like if somebody's asking for a custom piece, I know it varies across the board. But let's say that somebody wants a dresser, right? What's a reasonable turnaround time for that?
Dressers are a little more complicated because there's so many working parts that go with them. That might be one of the projects that takes longer than others. I would say that
I assume that's why
probably 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
2 to 3 weeks. Like there's some where I've knocked out in 2 weeks. I would say that on average, like if you're asking me, I'll probably give you a timeline like that.
Yeah. And so and like an estimate's like how many hours of work that might end up being on that project?
Oh man, it can vary.
Like
see, that's the thing with woodworking. You don't work by the hour, it's by the project, because if you actually charged by the hour, I mean,
ain't nobody gonna afford anything.
No, it'd be astronomical. So what we're doing, you have to have a passion for it and a love for it, and if you don't, and you try and make like, I'm gonna charge you by the hour. For one, you're gonna price gouge people out of existence, or they're not gonna be able to afford anything, and you're gonna be out of business.
Yeah.
So you got to make sure that and that's why you say, how many projects are you doing at a time? It's several to keep it going. It's part of the business model. You have to have that in order to continue, really.
Yeah, and I like it that you pointed out that there's an actual business model as opposed to like, I'm just going to make stuff out of wood and it's going to be fine and it's all going to work out.
You can do that, but I don't think you're going to go very far.
Yeah.
You have to have a plan.
Yeah.
I would say you can't plan for everything, but you can prepare for anything.
Yeah.
So it's all about preparation. It's like if you don't do your due diligence and like figuring out the numbers and how much it's going to cost to do this, for one, you're probably going to make a beautiful piece of furniture, but the cost of it, actually, you didn't make any money on it.
Yeah. Okay. So you got your projects going. You've had individuals, they've reached out to you and contacted you, they placed an order, you went through all that planning phase, you've actually assembled it, put it together.
Right.
What's that feeling like when you're just, you've completed this project, you're looking
at
it
marathon. You're running the race,
Uh-huh.
and you find it's like putting that fine like wood conditioner or like stain on it where it's like the colors pop, everything. It's like, like yesterday when I delivered the display case to Side Road, it was like such a awesome moment because it's like you're done. It's like a completed, like you cross the finish line, you're just excited, and you're done, you're finished, and that it's like a high, like when you finish a project like that, it's awesome.
Nice. And and what's the typical experience for an individual after they I mean, everybody's going to react uniquely, but you said that you like to be able to reveal the project to them after it's done.
Right.
Like no sneak peeks.
Sometimes. It depends, like, if they really want to know how it's going or what it looks like,
Yeah.
But a lot of times I like to just surprise them because, and that's part of what I do is like people will ask me for something specific, but they give me like artistic freedom to achieve that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what's their usual, how are their reactions? What's it like watching their reactions for you?
That's what it's all about. Like to me, it's like if they like it or if they have any, like if they want to change something, I want to make them happy first and foremost. Like if they're not happy with something, like, I'm going to fix it or do it over or do it better.
Well, let's clarify. You're like, in that element, you're like a chef in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Right? And if the meal's not coming out right, So it's not rude. It's not gonna hurt you.
Not at all.
For somebody to be able to say, you know what,
Mm-mm.
this looks great, but this isn't exactly what I need,
Yep.
and maybe this will change over here.
Mhm.
Okay.
And I hope
Yeah.
that they would say that to me
Mm-hmm.
and not think like, oh, he's going to charge me more for this or that. It's not like that at all. For me, it's all about customer service. If you don't give them what they want, then you failed.
Yeah. Nice.
You have to
Yeah.
have that mentality, because if you're just like, well, you're going to, pay me for whatever, it's like, I never want to be like that.
Yeah.
And nor will I ever be like that, because that's a different animal completely.
So, what's the future of NorseWest?
Well, that's a good question. As we're starting out the year, you always like to set goals for the year, and I think this year I'd really like to continue to, make the custom orders that I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
but also expand into some merchandising, with kind of taking the t-shirt companies that I did in the
Mm-hmm.
past, but kind of turning it into the NorseWest
Yeah.
thing. A lot of businesses, t-shirts, hats, that kind of thing, and
Mm-hmm.
just the marketing thing like that. Also, continue to make like one-off pieces to sell like either online or through shops locally.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just like a more of an artistic, creative space that you can, do things to do that way.
Yeah.
I'd say that's kind of the immediate future. I just hopefully, continue to work in the community and build things for different businesses
Mm-hmm.
and for residential areas, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you get very many orders from outside the area?
I do. Some in Portland. I built several things up there.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get orders for things around the holidays, like either cutting boards or something, and I've sent things around America.
Yeah. Nice.
Mhm.
That's great. It's
Mostly friends that I know.
Yeah.
It's not like I don't have a website or anything like that. They'll see something on social media and be like, "I want that. Can you send it to me?" It's like, "Yeah, cool."
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
yeah.
Awesome. And so, let's talk. We're almost out of time for the day.
Okay.
But let's take a little bit of time and let's talk advice.
Yeah.
Advice specifically for, and this could be. I'm gonna let you just freestyle here.
Okay.
You could talk about advice for woodworkers, who want to get, who are like, what, I really enjoy making these crafts and making this
Right.
art, and I want to take it to that next step. You could talk about individuals that are stepping out into their own small business, like a transition that you experienced where you went from, I've got this job to be able to pay the bills, I've got this job to be able to work it, but now I'm transitioning over to be able to do my own thing full time. I'll let you just freestyle on that as to what you want to touch on, but what would be your advice, to people who want to go from dreaming and planning to actually executing and making it happen?
Right. So I would say for the dream is like, be specific. Like, what do you want to do?
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, in the beginning, like I knew I wanted to have a business. Okay, but what is that? How do you get to take that business and turn it into something where it's actually viable and like you're making money and you're able to support it and all that?
Mm-hmm.
Be specific, be detailed, and how you want to achieve that, I think, is the other thing. Because when I started with the t-shirt company and thing, we had an idea
Mm-hmm.
and we were kind of doing it, but we didn't really have a business plan or anything to grow up beyond that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. It's just you're always looking to, like, how do I make it, take that dream and make it more of a reality,
Mm-hmm.
even more so than it's just, in the initial stages. How do you create staying power? These are questions you have to ask yourself. How do I continue to do something that I love for the same people in a small area, a small
Mm-hmm.
community, and you hope that your work speaks for itself.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that just comes from, having, prices that are affordable for everybody. I think that's the biggest thing, for me at least, in the woodworking thing. It's
Yeah.
like, be reasonable with what you're asking, but also you can't shortchange yourself either. You
Mhm.
have to make sure that, people understand, like, this is, if you want something out of walnut or, a higher end wood, it's going to cost more money.
Yeah. Yeah. So that mix of like, of knowing your value, knowing your own value,
Yeah.
but also having some humility and, like
You have to stay humble.
Yeah.
It's all about humility. Like,
Yeah.
I don't compete against any other worker, like woodworker at all. Like, it's all about me. I have to
Mhm.
compete against myself, like doing better than you did last time.
Yeah. And it's,
and just being like, look, it's great that I would hope that anybody would want like to pick up a saw or anything and try and figure out how to build something.
Mhm.
And I'm always hoping to encourage people to do that and not be like, well, you can't do it. No, because they can. They totally can.
yeah, you know what? Call it the golden rule, call it karma, call it whatever you want.
Mhm.
But the principle works, man. If, go out, be a good person,
Mhm.
help each other, support one another, that shit comes back to you.
Right.
Go out and be a dick and make somebody feel bad,
Yeah.
that comes back to you as well.
No, it totally does. And that's definitely something I don't ever want to be about. So,
no. Easily one of the nicest guys
Yeah.
I think I've ever met.
Yeah.
And so an absolute pleasure.
Cool.
Last words on here. Where can people find you? Any last bit you want to be able to share before we wrap up?
Well, I think going back to the thing is like, what is something I always think about, what is the most precious commodity we have? It's time.
Yeah.
How do you spend that time? How do you make your business good? Because you only have a short amount of time really in life to make that happen. And I really hope people hear those words out of anything we've talked about today and take that and take that dream that maybe you've been saving up, like you want to try. Give it a try. Do it. Just do it, because maybe you'll regret it. Maybe you'll look back and think, I really wish I would have tried to do that. Now's the time.
Yeah.
2020. Do your good.
Yeah.
Go for it. But as far as finding me, yeah, you can find me on Instagram under NorseWest Woodshop. You can find me on Facebook. Yeah, so those are the two spots that most people find me.
Easy way to be able to get you.
Yeah.
Mick, this has been an absolute pleasure.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
Oh
Appreciate
man,
it.
thank you for coming on to the show.
Yep.
Really appreciate it. For everybody else, thanks for listening in. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that notifications button so you don't miss an episode. We will talk to you next time. Until then, get to it.
Cool.
Nicely done,
Yeah,
man.
thanks.